Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Hard Claim with Viva Sam. I'm Sam, and this is a show where we talk to people who play Blood on a Clocktower and get their player perspective of the game. And joining us for this week's episode is Theo. Thank you for joining.
Hey, Sam, it's great to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so you've asked us to load in Harold Holt's Revenge. Um, Also, a great Leviathan script if you haven't seen it. Very little misinfo. Basically, all focuses on madness. Yeah, it's a fun time. I've sent out some characters. You've drawn the Slayer token, which is I think has an interesting place on the script. So if you and I were chatting on day one, what would you claim to me?
Honestly, so I think that I try to do almost the opposite of what I did the very last time I played. So I think that for me, I try to vary it up every time so I can't be meted too easily.
Mhm.
So, if last time I kind of played it straight, this time I might, go off on a different tangent. On this script, though, because it's such a unique and interesting script, I would.
Mhm.
There's not a ton. Well, I'm looking at the script now. It's been a little while since I played this one. There's not too much that can mess with me to poison me. I could be Serenovus. It doesn't really super matter. Um, yeah, I might just kind of play it clear and just, claim Slayer and start gathering information to try to coordinate with everybody to make a good shot toward the end. Um, yeah, this might be why I just play it nice and straight because there's going to be enough people spreading misinformation that maybe I shouldn't add to it if I don't have to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before we started recording, I was talking to Nina, and I've also kind of mentioned this in other episodes in the past, but Damsel in general is interesting. A lot of people like to kind of like dog on the Huntsman, but Damsel is really kind of a character where town needs to cover for a damsel,
Yeah.
so minions can't narrow them down. And this script like turns that up to 11 because there's no Huntsman on the script to kind of be that person who absolutely knows damsels in play.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, I mean, there is of course madness and pit hag on it, and it can kind of mess with you that way. But it's a Leviathan script, so people, in my experience in the script, tend to be more open.
Mhm.
And the risk ends up being you get to day five, everybody's kind of claiming truthfully what they are, but you have a damsel who's still being shady or double claiming somebody or whatever, and the minions just kind of go, well, that's the damsel, and that's our way to win. So
That's true. You have to be very careful. Yeah. In that case, yeah. Thinking about the damsel too, you're playing it a little bit close, close to your chest for the first day or two until you get the lay of the land, and sometimes you might suss out who the damsel is a little bit. You can kind of work with them to make sure that they have something to talk about that isn't claimed around
mhm.
the town, and kind of coordinate that way. Can sometimes be a little bit of a strategy too. Every time I run this script, I feel like you have to throw a damsel into this game whenever possible to liven it up for the evil team. We'll probably talk more about the script later, but I feel like this is a script that maximizes the fun for good, while maybe the Leviathan demon is maybe one of the least fun demons to be because you don't really get to do anything or make any choices. And so anything you can do to kind of liven things up for the evil team, I think helps maximize their fun. And I might be somewhat unique for Hard Claim as being someone who has run far more games than I have been a player in. I running pretty much every week, and I only get to be a player occasionally. So I'm always looking at it from this perspective: how can we maximize everybody's fun? And
Mhm.
so that's one thing I think about with the damsel in this script.
Yeah, it makes sense. I know for my play style, I like Leviathan just because it's very chill,
It's
and
true.
you just kind of have to kind of exist until the end of the game, and that fits my play style at least.
You do get to kind of fly under the radar a little bit. I don't. I
Yeah.
think in most games, to me, like giving players good choices
Hmm.
makes them feel like they have agency and fun. In this case, their choices aren't necessarily mechanically based. It's kind of what you talk to people about and how you shape the game from that perspective. So they still have choices to make and things to do. It's just less mechanical and more social for them, I think, in this script,
Yeah.
which is fine.
All right. So, Blood on the Clock Tower. when did you discover the game, and how did you discover it?
So, I didn't discover it until I think like August or September of 2023. So I'm definitely newer at it than most of you all, and the
Yeah.
folks who've been on Hurricane before. We have a little channel on YouTube called the Gallant Goblin, where since about 2017 we've been running content and writing content and reviewing things for Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and games like that. And I think I discovered Blown on the Clocktower on there was one viral TikTok that went up at that time, around then, in that August 2023, and I think it brought a lot of people to the game. I actually encountered I forget the fellow's name right now, but I actually ran into him at Gen Con and was able to thank him personally for making that little video review of the game
Great.
that I happened to come across, and, we got to play some there. There was a fellow from the Dice Tower who was there as well. I think that there's a right now the Dice Tower is running, their fundraiser, annual fundraiser, and they have a
Hmm.
new token, a new character, new traveler that's being available through that people are talking about as we're filming this. So yeah, we got to I brought in then, and I was like, this is going to be because I always love social deduction games. This has been one that I've really enjoyed, and I also like being a dungeon master. So this one, I liked the fact that there was a person in charge to make sure that everybody was having a good time, and because that's the kind of role I like to play. Let's make sure that everybody's enjoying themselves thoroughly. Everybody feels safe. Everybody's having fun, and so like this is great. And I've got a whole bunch of fun people here in Houston where we play. I have role players. I'm in the Houston improv community, and I thought, oh, my improv people are going to love this. They get to, bluff, make characters, and tell lies, and have a good time with that. It's like I can bring all these people together, and we can bring in folks from around the tabletop industry, because there's people from all over the world who create tabletop games, who work on D&D, who work on Pathfinder, and we are part of some of those communities. And oftentimes when we meet, we're always talking shop. We're always talking about the latest D&D release or the latest controversy around OGL, etc. And like maybe we can play this game, Clock Tower, and I'll just get around the table and have a good time without having to talk shop. We're just going to have fun and get to know each other outside of work. And that's how it kind of got started. And we started doing a weekly game, and we decided, and for me, I think some content creators can maybe relate to this. A problem where I'm not allowed to have fun unless it's always also work. And so if I'm going to play this game, we also have to record it and stream it and put it online. And luckily, it's not that hard to do. It's the tools that they've made available through the app, like we're sitting at here, make streaming and playing very easy. And so, yeah, we decided like let's just meet up every Wednesday and start playing. And it was originally just our little group of improv players and D&D people from around the world. And then Malachi showed up one day and started watching and jumped into our games. And other folks, Malachon has jumped in and played, and Beardy and Brad. And we started kind of combining some folks from the Clock Tower world with our little D&D and Pathfinder world and our improv world. And we've made a fun little community, a little goblin community over at the Gallant Goblin. And most of the players who play with me aren't super like they don't know who they don't know a lot of the TPI players. I think they just play every week. They don't necessarily consume the content, and so we have our own little, somewhat isolated meta in our little
Hmm.
group, which I think is a lot of fun, and it's a really diverse and lovely little group. And I've taught for a long time, but that's how we got started in the game a couple years ago, and we've been enjoying it.
Yeah, that's all good. Yeah, that's interesting because the way the game's played online has really, I think, shaped a lot of different spaces, even in person. So it's interesting to kind of see a group that maybe is, as you described, a little more isolated. Um, it's also so you mentioned, like improv people and people who do D&D, and I've been able to talk to on the show a handful of people who do improv and or basically are performers, and it's interesting to get their perspective on the game because it's a pretty performative game,
Mhm.
right? I think Mara Joy in particular had a good uh, answer about how she'll kind of use her improv experience to ask people questions and then see how they respond and kind of glean something from that. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, you learn to read people, read intentions, and
Hmm.
also just make up your own truth in your mind and speak it and help form worlds. And you also, I think, with improv comes the confidence necessary to make up your own world in this game, because I think a lot of new players struggle with being evil, that they have to confidently lie, and it's not something that necessarily
Hmm.
comes easy to people. But if you are an improv performer, you are definitely good at confidently lying and just running with it. And if we say something that doesn't make sense, we'll make it make sense later. It'll be fine.
I love that perspective. I really do.
Yeah.
So going back to you discovering the game, do you? Well, I guess first off, did you play in person to start out with?
I think our very first game was in person. I just invited a bunch of people that I thought would be interested over to the house, and I set mood music up. We had lighting. I invited
Hmm.
everybody to dress up, so we had just a
Wow.
very fun, good group of people. I think we had 10 to 12 people to get started, and just played all around the house, set up different rooms that were a bit themed. I really went all out, and I think it helped to lure folks in. It's like, oh, a social deduction game, but I get to dress up. So that brought people in. We had some themed cocktails. I think I picked out like we had the Scarlet Woman cocktail, we had the Baron cocktail, we had the Imp cocktail, and
Love
I
that.
just custom set them up, and we had all that. I need to do this again because we really only done it once. But yeah, we got to do that very first game, which was amazing. And then we also had just randomly, apparently, I assume you're familiar with Chris Grace,
Hmm.
the
We've
comedian.
had him on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from Superstore. Oh yeah, he has been on before.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is also in the improv scene, and he's good
Hmm.
friends with a lot of people of the improv community here. And so when Chris Grace comes to town, we all get together and play Clocktower. And so it's happened, I think, twice since we've gotten into it here at the Houston Comedy Improv Place, and we get together and just get to have some fun Clocktower times. And that's been the other times I get to play in person. So it's not too often. And then when we go to Gen Con, we get to play with a bunch of people too. So
Hmm.
it's only been a few times I've gotten to do it, but we're also going to be at Final 3 Con this year. We're featured content creator guests or whatever the term
Yeah.
is. And so we're going to get to have some fun there, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah. And Nina and I will see you there because we will also be content creators there.
Oh,
Looking forward
fantastic.
to it.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
gonna try to bring our little D&D perspective to it. So, my partner Grady and I are writing a D&D one shot that is themed after Clocktower, and we're gonna be
Ooh.
running that at the con. And so, if people want to kind of role play in a different way a Clocktower game through the D&D 5e rules, we're gonna be running one shots there, and we're actually recording a streamed one shot we're putting the people together. But it looks like we're gonna have like Ben Burns involved and Chiz and Brad and a few other people from I think Jams is going to be there. Hopefully, they don't mind me sharing this a little bit early, but it's my project, so I guess I get to talk about it. We're going to put that out hopefully in March before Final 3 Con to kind of lead up to our D&D adventure at the con. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's real fun. We do have some control when this episode will be out, so we might be able to coordinate that a little bit if
Oh,
you
for
wanted.
sure. That'd be great.
Yeah, I had something I was going to say in the middle of all that, and I forgot. So I'll just take a drink of water instead.
Oh, no, I understand that completely. Um,
Oh,
it's
I remember what it was.
been No, it's just we've had so much fun with Clocktower, and it's been such a surprise for us. When we first put that first game together in person, we had no idea that it would turn into a weekly thing for us. And not only that, but I think that it's become uh, a little family of ours, our little clock tower group. We have a little Discord where we chat, and so many people have made friends. We've had such a good time. We've So many people have been introduced to each other. People have gotten jobs in the TTRP industry from playing with us. One of the head
Cool.
marketing person at Paizo who makes Pathfinder has been a member of our group, and people have gotten work at
Wow.
Paizo just from making these connections. And like people like Malachi have been able to live nearby here. I was able to come out of the house a couple of times, come to our Chris Grace games. And then when we have issues like terrible weather in Houston, we can make sure like Malachi has a place to go when I think their place was having some issues at the time, and we would offer her a place to come to if she needed it. And it's just been really fun to put this little community together. So ups and downs and support each other, and that's been the best thing about this whole endeavor is just making all these new friends.
Yeah. So sounds like you were hooked before you even started playing, but I do wonder what did hook you about the game. What got you wanting to get into it, and then what kept you still running the game and playing the game ever since.
Yeah, I think that the first thing that hooked me was the fact that it took a lot of the things I liked about other social deduction games, but it had that dungeon master storyteller aspect to it, where there was
Hmm.
someone in charge with balancing it all the way through and ensuring that, like I said before, like everybody has a good time, and that you can kind of tweak things as you go and ensure that everybody's getting their moment in the sun to shine. uh, and I like that aspect of it where we can kind of control some of those things that can sometimes make some game other social deduction games not so fun for some people. And there's also someone who's a bit of a safety net. So if you have new players or just players who maybe struggle with some of the social aspects of the game or the rules aspects of the game, you can tell them you can always come to me anytime during the game. I can answer your mechanical questions. I can even like offer some like subtle advice on different things. And you have a safe place to come to and someone to talk to during the game, just to talk it out a little bit. And I think that makes the game a lot more approachable for a lot of other people to know that they have that there. And so I think that was the thing that really intrigued me about the game and was the biggest improvement upon the other social deduction games. And then the reason we just kept at is the tools are so easy to use, that it makes it playing very easy for everybody and seamless. And then the community that we built has gotten me, hooked. And I just there's weeks where I don't want to do it. I don't feel like playing. It's Wednesday night, and I'm like, oh, it's been a hard day at work. It's been tough. And then like, but it's sort of like going to the gym. Like you just got to go to the gym sometimes. Even if I want to, just show up and it'll be all right. And I'll load in the game, and my friends will be there, and I'll feel so much better after having seen them and played. Um, and it's just such a loving, caring group that's what keeps me going. It's just like it's just good to have some fun. And recently, I've started playing more with Resnora and Malashan and meeting their
Hmm.
group. And they play on Thursdays, and I've been invited to join their group. And so it's my first time getting to be a regular player, really. And so showing up and
Yeah.
being a regular player has been a lot of fun. I feel outmatched in that particular group, but they're also very welcoming and fun. And so we get to talk wrestling. We get to talk about like other BS and just have a good time. So I'm starting to the group keeps expanding, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I love over time everything. I feel like all these different groups keep getting more and more interconnected. I know people from, and it's great for a show like this because I have like just so many people I can reach out to,
Mhm.
or they know somebody. You mentioned Malachi. We uh, interviewed them. By the time this airs, they will have already had their episode out, and they're the one that recommended that you reach out and and be
That's right.
on. And yeah, I do also love the community aspect, obviously, and I I definitely feel you on so I run games every Friday. I've been running games every Friday since 2021, I believe.
Mm.
Then there's a few Fridays. I work during the day. I have to take a nap because our games go to about 1 a.m.
Oof.
And there's some days like, yeah, I just kind of wish I was just playing a video game instead. It doesn't take me 5 minutes into the game to be like, oh yeah, this is why I do this every week.
It also brings to
And
mind. I'm sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I just want to add, and also since it's mainly I play online, I do get to do in person some too. But obviously, a lot of people from the U.S., but I have people who are from the U.K. They stay up till 5 or 6 in the morning to play my games.
Hmm.
I have one player who's from Australia, and I've had a few others in the past from Australia. Had some from like the Asian countries. It's no, it's really cool to just meet everybody literally from all around the world and knowing
Absolutely.
that they come to play in your games.
I was also going to say that you were very helpful for me getting started too, which you probably don't even know this. But in some of my early games, I would struggle with some rules questions, and I would rush over to the Clocktower Discord, and I would post
No.
questions in there. And it was often you who would jump in, like just a few seconds after I posted, and would answer a rules question for me to help our game continue in a seamless way that was following the rules. And so having you and some of the other players who were so diligent at helping us newbies kind of make sure we could run the game was also very helpful. It's just like a welcoming community and a hopeful community who wanted to help bring new people in. There was no gatekeeping going on, and so
Mhm.
that was also something that's like I want to be more part of this community.
Yeah, I did not know that, but I'm very flattered, and I'm glad to know that it's helped somebody somewhere. And what I love about that too, because I don't, this game just like captured me. This is the kind of game where I loved just learning the game inside and out, learning every aspect of it, and feel like I've done it pretty well. At this point, so many other people have done that too that I don't. I still answer rules questions a lot, but not as much as I used to. Because quite frankly, there are tons of other people who have learned the game to that extent. Nowadays, it's more like kind of talking about strategy and trying to learn that, or how the fine points of how do you run high priestess well, or
Right.
even lately I've been thinking more and more about so for a long time and I still always talk about timing of the game, um, not running them too long, and nowadays I'm thinking more about, a lot of people don't know that the rulebook actually recommends that everybody stays within the circle for the whole game and not
Right.
leave the circle. And that's something I've been thinking about more and more lately. But,
It's such a
but
it's
yeah.
a game that evolves over time, especially,
Hmm.
you were adding characters for a long time too, which was helping it evolve in that sense. But just
Hmm.
the scripts with the amount of variability we have in the characters now, like this script that I picked out today, for example, plays entirely differently than like any of the base 3 scripts or most of the other scripts out there. And so like you can kind of decide like what kind of game do we feel like? Do we want like a quick chaotic game? Do we want a relatively simple straightforward game with this trouble brewing? Do we want complete hijinks? It's just kind of what you feel like. A lot of lying, a little lying. You can kind of tailor it and have a different experience every week while still playing the same game, and that's one thing that also keeps me going.
Yeah. I love hanging around people who theorize what the future expansions are going to look like. And our base three scripts all are very different from each other, and our what we think our ideas of all the expansion scripts all look like they'll play completely different. Oh, it's fun to think about. It's a fun experience. Obviously, we don't have the expansions yet, so we do have custom scripts, and yeah, huge variety. The base game to me is definitely the best part of the game. It's most well rounded. Um, Trouble Brewing easily for my money the best script there is.
Mhm.
But I'll admit, if it wasn't for custom scripts and experimental characters, my interest in this game would not have stuck as much for as long.
Yeah, absolutely. We do love just doing a trouble brewing every now and again, and sometimes you can do a little tweak to it, just if you want to spice it up, like with a marionette or with an ogre. Just a little bit of a tweak, and it can change like the entire experience in a great way. Just a little bit of rum added to your Coke, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it can be interesting to mix it up a little bit. TV variants aren't my favorite, but I do, and I've mentioned this several times before, but for me, it's important to run. I run base scripts every other week, and then custom scripts on the other weeks. Because for me, it's important for players to basically get those reps in. One, they're the most consistently fun experiences.
Mhm.
Because custom scripts often are fun, but sometimes they can be kind of hit or miss, or But yeah, it's just important for me that players get those reps in on the base scripts, no matter how experienced or not experienced they are, and for me as a storyteller to have those reps in. Yeah, and I like the variety, but I also like making sure those base scripts are in there.
Absolutely. And there's definitely, I feel like, a couple of custom scripts that have been put through the ringer quite a lot and tweaked and gotten to a point where, there may not be quite to the level of one of the base scripts, but they're definitely have a long track record and a little bit more proven to have a consistent positive outcome in your games. And I think this is perhaps one of them. Some of the ones that are featured on the
Hmm.
website.
Yeah.
Catfishing, I think, is one. So often, kind of when I'm going looking for scripts, like let's look at ones that won the script contests or that have just been have a really good community reception, and you can kind of branch out a little when you're first getting started, especially rather than doing something completely like, oh, I just found this on the internet somewhere. You have a few that you
Yeah.
can go to when you're ready to branch out.
Grim Scenarios has put together and has a good list of custom scripts, and I'm really hoping more communities do that, because I love to see what different communities like. Everybody kind of has their own scripts that they enjoy.
Mhm.
I want to say grew up. I didn't grow up with catfishing, but catfishing was like the custom script when I was coming to the game, and no, I guess I can't resist mentioning my own script, but it's wild to me to think that extension cord for a lot of people has reached that level, and it's
Mhm.
Strange to get used. It's hard to get used to.
Yeah, we played Extension Cord multiple times. One thing I try to do is we post our videos. I edit all our videos and put them on YouTube. One of the things I care about as a content creator is maximizing making people's time well spent. And so when I go and record these games and edit them, I try to edit them down. The night phases, cut out the part where I'm waiting for people to answer the phone, right? Let's just kind of keep it quick, cut during the night. During the day, you get to see everything, but at night, I cut it to just the important bits. But I also label all of our videos with the script that we're playing. So if you want to,
Mhm.
especially if you're new, if you want to watch somebody else run this script to see how it went for them, maybe learn from their mistakes, or just see how it goes. I try to put that on there. So hopefully, if you go to YouTube and you search for like Blood on the Clocktower and a script name, hopefully our videos might pop up. And you can kind of get a sense. One thing I've been wanting to do, and I was going to check with, there's a couple of websites out there where people post their scripts and they can accept comments. I want to see, like, would it be cool if I just go and comment, like, here's us playing this game and here's the link if you want to watch the script being played. And I always feel like I should check before I post comments like that, because it's a little self-serving, but it's also, like, I think useful to be able to kind of see other scripts being played, and you can kind of get a sense of how it plays out at that table, and you can see if it's right for your group or not. So that's one thing I've been meaning to do. It's just so hard to find the time with everything.
Yeah, somewhat similar to how I felt. We did when the Wizard came out. We recorded a video with Jams, and in my head, I'm like, my ultimate goal was I want people to be able to watch this video and kind of have an idea how to play the Wizard, and just kind of have that early guide out there. But also it's self-serving. Now I have a video with about 20 times the views of any of our other videos.
Oh,
So
wow.
I don't know if it's 20 times. It's our average video probably does under 200 views, and that one has about 3,000. So
Oh, that's awesome. We're slowly
So yeah.
building up our Clock Tower community. Like, we do mostly do D&D
Mhm.
content, and those videos get a couple of thousand views. But our Clock Tower videos are less than that. There are maybe a couple of hundred at most. But I think that we're building. People go and just binge watch all of them. We just posted our 50th video. I think I posted it this morning, and so people go in and start watching from the beginning and watch all the way through, and people will ask
Mhm.
questions on game 13, like, what about this ruling? And I'm like, I don't remember that game. I have to go back and check. But yeah, what was the first wish you saw in a game? I'm curious about that for a wizard. Do you remember?
That I saw that I
That
actually
you were in
ran
your end?
or played.
Yeah.
What? So let me think. So I always wait. Like, well, if I can, I usually waited a week before a character, before I ran a new character, just to see what scripts come out, so I could pick some better scripts. Game one. So she wanted to wish that every player was the play, or every good player was the plague doctor.
Okay.
I was like, I don't think that's going to be fun, because then everybody's just, that's the only thing they can do is be a plague doctor.
Yeah.
So I said, probably what I wish we could do is everybody has a plague doctor ability.
Yeah.
That I can work with.
Yeah.
So we went with that. I gave a hint. I would reference different pieces of media that had like zombie outbreaks, or like Stephen King's The Stand. 28 Days Later has the third movie coming out after so many years. 38. So 28 years later. So everybody had the plague doctor ability. Every time somebody died, I didn't keep giving myself the wizard ability. I gave myself the Serenovus ability.
Mm-hmm.
So basically every day, 2 more people than the previous day was getting made mad at something. And by the time the game ended, I was running my own 7 Serenovus abilities plus an actual Serenovus in the game. Funny enough, not really as much as helpful for evil as you might think.
Yeah.
I didn't really need to do much of a cost, because I could kind of do the Serenovusing how I wanted.
Yeah.
So some people, I made them mad as their own role. I didn't Seralock anybody. I didn't like make them mad as the same thing over and over. So I moved it around. So it made it pretty obvious after a couple of days what was going on. We had a poisoned fisherman. I gave him the advice to be particularly suspicious of double claims.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which, not good advice, but and finally, unfortunately, the game was just kind of getting to a point where evil was probably going to lose the next day. Oh, I remember. I did make a small cost where at least one evil player on any given day had to be mad by a Ceranovus.
Yeah.
So basically, with the 7 Ceranovus abilities that I had, I chose one evil player and picked the first 7 townsfolk on the script for them to be mad at.
Oh my gosh. Good luck
Which
with
they
that.
looked at it and said, "I'm claiming mutant."
Yeah. That's about all you can do at that point.
Yeah, but yeah, that was the first wish I handled, and it was a lot of admin work by the
I feel like
end.
yeah, you could we talk for hours just about the wizard and all
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
implications that character has and how to implement it in a way that is what I've realized is after playing with it a little bit now, like and to handle it with responsibility, one
Mhm.
that's not going to be too taxing for the storyteller, and two to make the game still solvable by the good team because sometimes it throws so many things out the window that I think it makes the game a little less fun for the good team because it just feels like it's unsolvable, like anything could be happening, there's no way to know, so what are we even doing here? And so yeah, you have to find a way to make all that balance, but it's a fun challenge, which I quite like.
Yeah, yeah. I ran through wizard games. They all were a bit challenging, but fun. None of them were particularly useful for evil. The second one was he wished that in all abilities on the script that day and night were reversed.
Hmm.
So anybody who did anything at night, I had to have them visit me during the day to get their info or to make their choice. And then the fisherman was the only day ability, so I had to visit them at night to see if they wanted their advice.
That's fun. That's an interesting one.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately, it also doubled up with a snake charming that happened, and that basically cooked evil. So it didn't really play out for very long. They were theorizing, oh, we could execute a mayor, and then somebody else would die instead.
oh God, yeah. You learn why characters are designed to go during the day and at night. It's like
Yeah,
now that we see how they work in the other way, it makes sense. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
I did run it so for example, the demon kill. I got it during the day, but I didn't enact the kill until domination opened because otherwise that just kind of outs the demon. And it kind of helped good too, actually, because it meant one player got their information and then died, even though if it had happened at night, they would have died before getting their information.
That's
So,
true.
but it was fun at least.
Yeah, our very first demon game was our 50th game that we did recently, and it was a 16-player game because we were trying to do a big blowout for our 50th. And it was our 50th game, 16 players, and our wizard decided that their wish would be just, I want you to wake everybody up and tell them that they're evil. They're not evil, nothing changes, but I just want you to tell everybody that they're evil. And I thought that was a fun wish too. It happened early on, happened I think night one, and or maybe night two. No, it's not. Yeah, I think it was night one. And by the time a couple of days had passed, like people had kind of figured it out because you had empath information, you had steward information, cannibal steward information. So people sort of sorted out that they're probably not evil, and so it didn't end up having a huge impact in the game. But it certainly made for a very interesting first day or two with people kind of
Hmm.
talking about this and trying to figure out what was happening. And I thought that was a good use of the wizard ability. I think the wizard is just great at distracting everybody from
Yeah,
solving the game, and I think that's a great way to use it.
that's exactly what Jams mentioned about it. And if I remember correctly, I think she said it was actually Patters who had made this point. So I'm just hearing it filter through Jams, but that it's something like you can try to solve the wizard ability, you can try to solve for the demon, but you can't do both.
Yep.
So yeah, the distraction I think is a great word for it. If you're playing to make the wizard useful for the evil team, my sense so far is to do a smaller wish that's more subtle. But nothing wrong with playing it for fun either, though, of course. But
That was
uh, the wizard that wished for a day and night to be reversed, he didn't think that was going to be useful. He just thought it'd be fun,
yeah,
and
I
it
think that's a
was.
great way to do it. Just give everybody an experience. I was just
Yeah.
watching a Patters game before we started, and the wish in that game, not to spoil anything if you haven't seen it, but was like the wizard just wanted the poisoner's ability, but then wanted Patters to do a whole bunch of wizardy BS through the rest of the game, to say things and do random things that didn't have any impact on the game. And it's like that's how you do it. You a little subtle wish, and then maybe some distraction fireworks around it to distract. And I think
Yeah.
that's good.
Um. All right. So talking about actually playing this game a bit, what kind of characters do you like to play? Do you like like ongoing information characters? You kind of like things that have strong power. What's your jam?
I oftentimes when I sit down, I am just, it's the end of the workday and I'm tired, and I'm sitting here like, give me librarian, give me steward, give me something very simple. But then like when it rolls around and I get the last game I played, I was the cannibal, and I had never been the cannibal before, and that was so fun because it was something different every day, and it was an encourage. I like the rules that encourage you to interact with the other people, and the cannibal is definitely one of those. And I really enjoyed being the cannibal, and I got to live for a couple of days and have a lot of really good information. So I really like. There's not many I don't like. If it's a first night ability, then you get to have a kind of a relaxing game, just be social and kind of focus on putting the puzzle pieces together. If you get ongoing information, you feel important, you feel like you got something to contribute, and that feels good. If you're a minion, you get to have just complete chaos and hopefully be distracting without any of the responsibility of being the demon. The demon probably my least favorite because I feel the responsibility, and I just like I'm still at the point, where I haven't played enough to have that confidence. I've been the demon a couple of times. Of course, when I first go play a Malachi stream, I draw a demon like for like first 3 games I play over there. But it's fun, but just like it feels like you feel like you have the pressure on you that I gotta do this right. But you also have less of the uncertainty because you know who you can trust and who you can't. And so I think it kind of relieves some of that pressure. So there's not many roles I really dislike. It just kind of depends on the mood I'm in that day, but I can usually get myself behind anything.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear. Kind of like you, I don't play much. I storytell way more than I play. I've gotten to a point where I'm not so nervous playing as a demon, but I'm not quite to the point where I'm actually anywhere good at it.
Yeah, it's
Where I break down is you get people who's played 1,000 games and they can just like build a world like it's nothing. Meanwhile, I'm here at the demon. They're like, oh well, in this world, Sam's a demon, but in this other world, he might not be the demon, but he's still evil. And I'm like, I don't know how to counter this.
I watched some of these games, some of the TPI games, and just night 2, and there's Ed, and he's like, I think, and he'll just name what every player's character is, basically. So like, how? And he's like the mutant or something, right? And so like, how did you put it all together? But yeah, people are so good at this game that
Hashtag nerfed.
I feel outclassed, but I can still have a good time, and I can still
Yeah,
sow some care.
that's the important part. Yeah.
I think I do have my performing background, and I think I'm pretty good about BSing my way through being evil. Like I still seem good when I'm evil, and I think that's what gets me through in some of these games. Like I'll get people who really believe in me. They're like, at least a couple of Theo's not evil. Like you need to he's working hard to solve this game, and he is so genuine and earnest, and it's like he can't be evil. And then it'll only get me so far. I can only fool people so many times before they call me on it. But so
Right.
far, that's my superpower. So I have to keep playing with new groups so they don't know.
I played on a TPI stream once where I was the Oho and did a village idiot bluff and got pretty far, but ultimately they executed me. Like, okay, great. Got to the next game. I draw the Oho token again.
Mm-hmm.
2 sober village idiots choose me night 1. And then that was that game. They executed me, and I was like, there's nothing I could do there.
No, I mean, sometimes it's just a dice roll against you, and there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
But it's fun. Then you get to play again, and everybody gets to have a different experience with a different role, and everybody's enjoying themselves.
Right.
So nothing wrong with a quick game.
So this game, more so than even S&V or a lot of scripts, focuses on madness.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that already answers this question, but how do you feel about madness in this game?
It kind of speaking from my experience with my little group of goblins who I play with every week, it took folks a while, and I still feel like I have to kind of give reminders of how madness works. So it is one of those things where I do have to find myself constantly making sure people understand how it works, and it's a choice, and all the things that our audience here probably already knows. I think it's an integral part of the game. I think it's a fun part of the game, and I think that when players learn to just embrace the badness, it's like you're giving these players an excuse to go and cause mischief and chaos, and a lot of players will embrace that and really play hard. Like, oh, if they're the savant, like I'm making the most convincing savant information, and I'm gonna like really roll with this. And if I can get people to believe me, then I've won my own personal little mini game. And so I think when you get people who embrace it to that extent, then you get to have a lot of like it can be a lot of, even more fun than it was without it. So I do enjoy Madness. It's just it does take prep and being able to kind of answer questions about it with your new players. So how
Yeah.
about you? What do you think about it?
I enjoy it. I probably don't have as much experience with it from a player perspective as I would like. I was thinking in my head, one of my favorite things I've done was I was a pixie who saw the fortune teller token, and I somehow managed to find the fortune teller, double claim them to their face, and they're just like, well, I'm the fortune teller. I'm like, no, I'm the fortune teller. And for some reason, they weren't like they didn't understand the pixie thing, but they also weren't like suspicious. But they were just more confused. But
Yeah.
then result was they would each day they were telling me who they chose and what they got. So I just took that information and passed that on. And I was like, oh, this is a breeze.
There you go. And you don't spread any misinformation, which is good for the good team.
Right.
From a storytelling perspective, too, I really enjoy characters like the Sarah Novus because it often gives you, and the mutant, it often gives you the if you can catch some Breaking Badness, then you get to that end of the day, and it gives you one to save a game where the demon's about to be executed. You can execute somebody else instead, or if there's a very suspicious character or player then about to be executed, you can frame them by executing somebody else instead,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives you that moment where your players go, oh, when you execute the madness break, and those little moments of drama, I think, add so much to the game too that you don't get without Madness, when you can get the options at the end of the day, like who you're going to execute. And I love those little moments. All those little memorable things make it so much better.
Yeah. Something. So earlier I mentioned thinking more about how the rulebook recommends staying within the circle,
Mhm.
and the reason I've been thinking about that because Emma on the Grim Scenario server, the server in general, just kind of talking about Madness and how probably too many storytellers are soft on Madness and don't execute when maybe they should. The point that Emma made that I really enjoyed was that, and it's had me thinking for like a full day or a couple of days really since. Imagine Madness and its goal kind of makes more sense when you realize that most of the game is meant to be a group discussion. Yes, you can have private conversations, but it's more like you and I stand up and kind of whisper for like 10 seconds and then kind of go back and continue our discussion. So if you're mad as, let's just say, the dreamer, well, you're talking to the whole group when you're trying to convince people that you're the dreamer, not just like talking to 2 or 3 people a day, convincing them, then kind of coming back to town and then figuring out who to execute. That's something I've been giving a lot of thought of lately, and I don't know what to do with it yet, but that's my more recent kind of take on Madness, at least how it was designed in the game.
That makes sense. You've got me thinking about keeping people around the circle too, and I think it might be kind of a group to group because every group plays this game somewhat differently.
But
And,
definitely, yeah.
and and like I mentioned, kind of my group is less Clocktower diehards and more a little social family that likes to come together and play the game. And I think that some of their favorite parts of the game are those 9 minutes of private talks that they get to have during the day, because they're talking about the game, but they're also just catching up with friends, meeting new people, making connections, having a good time. And I think they really enjoy that part of the game. And so for our little group, it might not work as well, or at least not. But we wouldn't want to do it consistently. I think that there's mixing it up every now and again. I think there's a fabled that doesn't let you leave the table at all.
A matron.
Yes, and so I think those are great but I think for our group it wouldn't work as well, just because they love those little private chats, and those are great for them. But group to
And
group,
see,
it's a fun idea.
yeah, matron makes a little more sense too when you think that everybody probably would normally just be sitting there, occasionally getting up to kind of talk to somebody. But yeah, it definitely is a group to group. You mentioned 2 things that I personally strongly recommend against when running the game. One is going into other rooms. That is something I strongly discourage. at the very least, when I run games, I want everybody with an eyesight. Um, and again, I'm not saying any group that does it differently is wrong, but that's just my recommendation. How I think the game plays best. You also mentioned 9 minutes, and of course, first thing in my head is that is way too long.
Well, I try to vary it based on how big the group is.
Yeah.
And I originally didn't set a timer. I would just kind of go by vibes and when I to bring people
Hmm.
back. Um, I know my group isn't solving the game during this whole 9 minutes. It's a lot of just chit chat and I'll
It
jump in
makes
and they're
sense. Yeah.
talking about what's going on in their lives. And so I think it's but and those minutes definitely decrease as the game goes forward. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think the how much time you give each group, I think, is also dependent on that group too, right?
Definitely.
Like
Yeah.
the
I
more
mean, yeah, like yeah. I mean, yeah, like you said with your group, that definitely makes sense to me. I don't think I would say no. You shouldn't do that. Like that doesn't make sense for me to do. Um, 'Cause, when I play games, and most people that I know are playing running games, you kind of want an efficient game,
Mhm,
and you get it out of the way, and then you know you get the game over, and then you go on to the next game.
mhm.
Sounds like for you all, it's just. I mean, for any game, it's a social experience, obviously, but you all seem like you like lean more towards the social, and yeah, that's totally fine. One of the things I think is that the game goes too long. Usually, it gets very tiring for people. Like they're kind of in a character, they're trying to figure something out, or they're trying to keep other people from figuring it out. You go over 2 hours for a lot of people, and it's just exhausting.
Yeah.
But if you're spending half the game just kind of socializing and hanging out, that might not even be a problem. So,
We definitely have had players too who balk at the larger games. When you have more than 12 players, it becomes difficult for folks. People getting that word in edgeways or feeling like people are talking over them. And so we've also started. One thing I've been meaning to do more of is just designate this is going to be an 8-player game. We're only going to take 8 players this week. Maybe next week it'll be a 10-player game or 12-player game. But we want to kind of vary that up too because it's a different experience for everybody. Like we have an 8-player game, we could probably get 2 games in during our time frame pretty easily. Um,
mhm.
Tightening it up, like you said, I think is probably something I need to focus on too. You're always trying to get better at storytelling, and I think that's one thing I can get better at.
Absolutely.
Just like
Yeah.
let's just speed this along a little bit, keep it snappy. But yeah, those are things I've been thinking about too. So I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah. My in-person games, really, no matter the size, I don't. At least for the private discussion phase, I don't like go past 5 minutes.
Mm,
Five is like my max, and really lately by day three, it's probably like 3 minutes, and yeah, and then real honestly, like the way my group's been going right now, after kind of like day 2 or 3, they might still be having private chats, but they're not really doing as many private chats, and that's not my doing. That's just kind of like how they've kind of adjusted. Online, I usually give a little bit more time. I so a lot of times my only clock tower each week is my Friday games. So you're 2 games a week. So I've started, especially since I think the app handles it a lot better, and we have I like to brag that I think we have a particularly good group.
mm,
I'll take as many people that sign up, and that has sometimes meant running 18-player games.
yeah.
Very regularly, we have 16, 15, 16-player games.
Mm.
Um, 7 minutes is my max for private discussions, and I've thought about lowering that even.
I can
Um,
definitely see why. Yeah, it does make
yeah,
sense.
12 players, 6 minutes or less,
Mhm.
and then getting quicker from there. I'm still, I several years ago I spent a lot of time thinking about timing, and I came from a group. 12 minutes was your normal 12-player count, and yeah, I realized that's way too long. And I was like, oh, we'll only do 9 minutes, and then I was like, well, 9 minutes is way too long. So I kept bringing it down, and now I'm at a point again where I'm thinking about it even more. And like you said, it's a constant evolution of both playing and storytelling.
I can say another thing too that affected that for us is originally for almost the first year, we decided as a group that we wouldn't have game chat at night, which is unusual for clock tower games. I think
Mm-hmm.
our reasoning was we had a few reasons. One, we originally put our group together for people to get to know each other and to make contacts in the industry and all this. And so we're like, if we kind of reserve the night for just people getting to know each other. it allows for time for that for people to socialize. Two, we also had people who were, still nervous about being evil, still had some anxiety around it. And so kind of having that nighttime where it's just like you get a little time off now. You don't have to bluff, you don't have to lie, you can just kind of not worry about the game so much and just kind of chat. And so that worked out for us for a good while. And so it's like, let me give them a little bit more time during the day to talk and strategize because we're not going to have that time at night. And so I think that kind of affected it too for us. And we've
Yeah.
definitely lightened up on that um, over time because they wanted to talk about the game at night, and I was like, okay, so we kind of lightened up on that after a while. But that was one of the things that we thought about early on, which I think is, I don't know if that's like a little bit unusual for a clock tower group.
It, I've heard of a lot of groups who don't allow discussion at night. Not for very different reasons. What you said, because that makes a lot of sense to me. But a lot of groups just a lot of times they come from other social deduction games. You've mentioned them. Werewolf, you don't do that. Werewolf Mafia, pretty much any other social deduction game, you don't talk at night. It's like not just don't you do it, like that's forbidden. Like you'll get yelled at for doing that. So they just come in with that mindset, or they just I don't know for some reason inherently think it's unfair. I don't know. Um, so yeah, it's not super unusual. I would say my personal opinion for worse reasons what you stated, but like you said, your group feels to me just hearing about it a little unique and
Yeah.
just kind of the makeup and what you all are doing. So like yeah, that's why usually when I try to give advice, I should probably express this more often, but my advice is usually more. This is kind of general best practices. I can't tell you what's best for your group, but if you tell me that you're running games for 9 minutes during the day, what I can say is that you probably shouldn't. Maybe it makes sense for your group, but for most groups, you shouldn't be doing it.
I mean, it's just like being a dungeon master in a D&D game. Like you
Exactly.
get your group, you're going to have one group who really loves the mechanics of the game. You have another group that just doesn't care at all about combat and just wants to go and role play. And so I think that's one thing that makes a good storyteller is you get to know your players, you get to know your group and
Hmm.
find what works specifically best for them. And it's the same as like running the characters. We've talked a little bit briefly about like High Priestess, um, and or even like Fisherman. If you can kind of tailor, what that player is good at. So you might not tell the same uh, for High Priestess character to two different players because they have different ways of playing, and you think that Jim would get more information talking to this character, but I think Tom is very good at sussing out evil. And so they might be better to send to a minion who doesn't have a bluff yet. And the more you can kind of tailor it per player and per group, it makes your storytelling even better. And so that's one thing I really encourage people to do too is get to know your players so well.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot to be said about some people play this game in public spaces, and then others kind of find sort of their home group. Um, and obviously again there's no right or wrong way to do it, but in my opinion like it really favors finding a group that works for you, and thankfully there's a lot of them now. And you even
Mhm.
mentioned you're doing content creation. There's tons of content creators now, and most of them have their own community that most of them you can just go join.
Mhm.
Like my signups for my Discord, I don't actively advertise them, but anybody can come and sign up for a game if they want. If you end up being a bad fit, then we might ask you to stop. But I very, very rarely had to do that,
Yeah.
thankfully. So yeah,
Most of these groups are so welcoming, and if you kind of especially if you hang out in the community a little bit and watch their things and contribute and comment, like, they'll get to know you and, you can be brought in and enjoy playing with them. It's a very welcoming community just in general.
yeah. All right, so I do have a section here of what I like to call divisive characters, just to get your thoughts and opinions on them. So let's start out here. How do you feel about Snake Charmer?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Um, as a storyteller, I always think twice before adding it to a script because it can really make a game Go tits up very quickly,
Yeah.
to coin the phrase there. And so when I want a game to, when I really want to make sure a game goes the distance, I might not include it. But it's certainly uh, a fun one to have in. I love the push your luck aspect of it. And
Mhm.
like it's one of those that I mentioned. I think it's great when you have the drama, when you have important decisions to make. And so the Snake Charmer is one of the most dramatic characters in the game. It is the ultimate push your luck character, and so it's just fun. It's fun to watch. When you're watching other people play the game, you want that Snake Charmer to be in the game because it gives that drama. You don't know what's going to happen. I think when you are the Snake Charmer, it's a high pressure role, and you can play it however you want. You want to pick yourself the entire time. That's your decision. But like you also gain so much information. So I think it's
Mhm.
from a somebody watching the game, it's a great character. From a storytelling perspective, if you're making content, you want to make an exciting game, like it's a great character to have. As a player, I think it's you can wield this power however you want to, and so I think it's fine and it's fun, and it can make a game go sideways, but it can also make for some really dramatic fun moments. And so that's what we're there for. Like I think there's so many stories people have out there about snake charm games. Like
Mhm.
that's where you get some of the war stories from, and so that means it's a good character too in my mind.
One of my group's earliest games. I wasn't even in this game. I was just spectating. This was before I was storytelling very regularly, but it was some kind of custom script, and there's a snake charmer, and uh, town just kind of left them alone until they got to the final three. And again, this is like early in the group, so people were still kind of figuring out how everything works. Long story short, they did snake charm the demon, and the demon, is like, I was snake charmed last night, and now the new demon was like, what? No, no, you. And meanwhile, there's a sailor over here who is completely lost, and even the evil team doesn't know like what's happening. Town ended up losing that game, and that player was extremely sour on Snake Charmer for the rest of time.
That's fair. The one thing I haven't seen in any of my games yet that I want to see is that fake snake charming at the end of the game, where the demon just makes
Hmm.
up being snake charmed. And I haven't had that happen yet, and I keep waiting for it to happen because
Yeah,
that's another fun opportunity with that character on the script.
it's something people should probably do more. I don't know the best way to do it. I know there is a way to do it. This script in particular particularly leans well for doing it because town's limited on executions. Um, I mean, I guess they're not as limited if uh, if there really was a swap, then the execution's kind of reset. But if you do that on day five, which is equivalent of final three, yeah, it really really puts everybody in a bind.
Yeah,
I I think probably a minion should be the one to bluff it, I guess.
that makes sense too.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I think this is probably the perfect script to do it on. They're like, oh yeah, I was Stink Charmed last night. By the way, Bob, you were the marionette.
Right? Yeah. This is
You know,
it's ripe for opportunities.
yeah. All right. Another character here, and this is actually also on this script. How do you feel about politician?
I love politician. I always want to include it when I'm playing games. It is a token that you get to hand to somebody, and they get free reign in this game to do as much chaos as they feel like they want to do. And it's just a fun role to get. It's a fun role to hand out. I think my players still struggle with maximizing chaos sometimes. They say like, oh, it's a good token. I really should play for good. They have that lawful good attitude alignment about them personally, and so politicians sometimes doesn't necessarily play into the way they would normally want to conduct themselves in a game. But I think that the more you play, the more opportunities you get to have be part of the chaos. You start to embrace them more and more. And so it's just one of my favorites, and I always try to find, like, if a politician is doing their very best, I try to find a way for them to turn. Sometimes you can't always do it. You can't always give in and let the politician switch
Yeah,
at the end. But I want to give me something. Give me a reason to turn you, and I will.
yeah, that makes sense.
What do you think about it?
Uh, I'm. It's probably one of my least favorite characters. I don't mind it, but I'm like, it's it's there. It does a thing. It's fine. Um, I think maybe it's my least interesting way for a character to turn evil. Um, but I don't know. I'll be curious to see where it lands on a home script in the future and see how it plays. Maybe there's a way that it kind of makes more sense, or maybe it'll be on Greatest Show on Earth and it's just you slap it in everywhere or anywhere. I don't know. I don't feel too strongly on it, but I'm like, yeah.
It can be a fun one to if I feel like good has quite a lot of good information and maybe evil is on the back foot, like throwing a
Mm-hmm.
politician there when I'm looking at the outsiders, it's sort of almost giving them a free evil player. Um, and so sometimes I think about it in that sense. Like I think that it's more powerful for evil than maybe even the lunatic is. Mutant and Damsel are also pretty powerful for evil. So sometimes I look at it from a
Mm-hmm.
balancing perspective too.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, definitely on this script it fits in for that quite well because the character that has incentive to. In fact, on not this script but a Leviathan script, I've been on the losing good team because a politician did a really good. Actually, I think it's two different games I've lost to a politician. One
Hmm.
was that he got themselves executed,
Hmm.
made themselves look suspicious, and it's kind of hard not to like you know uh, give them that if they've done a good job at trying to get themselves executed. The other one, I think it was Ed, who was a politician and was did a pretty good job at getting the demon off the block like halfway through the game and
Hmm.
pushing on the wrong people. And very sadly, and I regret this to this day. Very sadly, I had turned down a Mesword that game
Yeah.
because I thought good was about to win, and technically we were. We had the demon on the block, and it was the politician who who pulled us away from that.
Yeah, the politician is a strong one for evil, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So next character here. How do you feel about Poppy Grower?
Poppy grower. Gosh. Um I I use it sparingly when
Mm-hmm.
I'm running games, primarily because my group is less experienced. And I think that a lot of my group are also prone, some of them, not all of them, but are still prone to have some anxiety with being evil. And so
Yeah.
when you have that poppy grower that, I mentioned earlier on when you asked me kind of what characters I like to play, the thing that gives you a little bit of stability when you're evil is that you at least know who you can trust and you have people who are backing you up. And so that takes that away from the evil players. And so you have to have it every now and again. It's an integral part of the game, and so I want to include it sometimes. But I try to make sure that I have a group of players who would be okay being evil without having that safety net there. So just
Mm-hmm.
from a perspective of making sure everybody has a good time at my table, I'm a little bit sparing with it, at least with my group. Um, I
Yeah.
haven't been a player, I think, in a Poppy Grower game yet. So it's hard to speak from that perspective. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting character. I've spoken to a number of people who really enjoy the puzzle of kind of the puzzle it adds for the evil team. It's a very powerful character, obviously, but it is also a pretty advanced character, I would say. So it makes sense that you'd want to be careful about putting it into a group with relatively newer players. It kind of expects that players are already pretty familiar with the game and how it plays and how to feel it out. And once you've got some experience in, it's a little easier to kind of be okay with being on your own or um, kind of a clever script has ways to find your evil team even without a poppy grower. Um, I really love Boffin for that. There's a lot of Boffin abilities can help a demon point towards the evil players,
Oh yeah,
and I like that a lot.
and
But yeah,
the snitch is a nice training wheels for a Poppy Grower game, and
yeah,
so at least the minions get those bluffs to kind of help them blend in a little bit, so they have something to grasp onto for safety. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
another one I can do too.
All right. How do you feel about Heretic?
Oh God, I I've played in a couple of Heretic games. I I feel like Heretic is probably the most acquired taste of the characters. I can imagine once I feel like I am a very advanced player, I could appreciate the Heretic, but where I'm at now in my clock tower journey, when the heretic is on the script, it feels like it paralyzes me as a player. That I just, there's normally, what you're supposed to do as of the townsfolk, and you know how to kind of put the puzzle together and kind of generally how to do that. But when the heretic's on the script, I just feel like I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm being helpful or hurtful. I don't know if I, should share my information or not, and it sort of paralyzes me. And at this point, it makes the game less fun for me, especially when I feel like there's not a good way to really verify if there's a heretic or not. And so, just like
Mhm.
I don't know what to do, so I'm kind of stopping having fun. I'm sure there must be. I'm sure there must be scripts where you can kind of find some people who can verify it possibly. And I think that would probably be more fun. But right now, this one I struggle with.
Makes sense. I'm about to. I will have already ran this by the time this aired, but in a few days I'm going to run a little monster script with a storm caught heretic. So evil will know that heretic's in play.
Hmm.
I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
That's
Um, yeah, heretic's an interesting one. I don't know if I've ever played in a heretic game. I can't really think. Heretic's definitely an ability that I think is a lot different from a player versus a storyteller. I know Damsel's a lot like that. Yeah, I ran Damsel a ton before eventually drawing the character myself. And I remember looking at the token in front of my screen and being, oh, so this is what that feels like.
yeah. It's a bit of a sinking feeling. Like, ooh, I somewhat struggle with the characters that can single handedly lose a game. So like the damsel or
Mhm.
what's it what's the one where you have to pick a person if you get killed and if they're evil, your team loses. That's
The closest I can think of right now is Fearmonger.
no the
No.
outsider who there's two outsiders that when you die you have to pick a player. Um,
Oh, Klutz.
yeah,
Gotcha.
Klutz.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
I struggle with Klutz too because I think it can be a little bit of a feel bad moment for that player if they kind of single handedly lose the game for their team by picking the wrong person. It's usually a group choice, but I worry
Mhm.
that it'll be a feel bad moment for that player. And so I'm a little bit hesitant with some of those too. And so that kind of is a little bit similar to that. Like, this would be I'm a little careful with that one because I just want to make sure that everybody feels good at the end of the game.
That's fair. You could play it like how Nina played in a recent SMV game that I ran. She was a klutz and she died like night 3, or it was like fairly early, or maybe it was earlier than like night 2. But we had somebody. It was his birthday, and she said, "Yeah, I'm gonna pick him, and if he's good, then great. If he's evil, well, happy birthday, you won."
Yeah,
He
exactly.
was evil. He was evil, and the game was over.
Happy birthday. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Yeah, those characters just make me a
Night 2
little bit
death.
concerned.
She said. Yeah, she said night 2 death. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wow.
I remember. Also, I remember there was a snake charming that night too. So the demon became not the demon, and then woke up and lost.
Jeez. That's a rough one.
Yeah.
Roller
What can
coaster
you do?
feeling.
Um, but yeah, it kind of makes. I mean, Klutz isn't an advanced character. Klutz is interesting because it uh, makes an outsider need to look around and try to social read people and figure out who's evil, who's not.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, it's usually easier to find a good player. Or honestly, an evil or an early game is the hardest because that's when you have a less of an idea who's good or evil. But thinking about characters like uh, Damsel, Goblin, even throwing Heretic into that, these are characters we think will probably be on Midnight in the House of the Damned, which is in its description described as players can single handedly win or lose a game.
Yeah.
And that is also the only edition classified as an expert script.
Oh yeah. Because I do
Um,
love like the
yeah.
Slayer is a great character,
Mm-hmm.
because when that Slayer hits and wins the game for the team, they feel like a hero. They feel like it's such a great feeling, and they'll talk about it afterwards, and it's their
Yeah.
war story. And I love those moments. I think those are great. I know there's the opposite where you feel like you lost it for your team, and that's a little bit rougher. So just from my perspective, trying to make sure everybody has a good time, that's where I see those characters. But once you've gotten used to the game and you've gotten experienced players, like they don't care. They're like, oh, we get to re-rack and have another game, and it's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. An older version of my group used to have what they called the Slayer leaderboard.
That's awesome.
So anytime they got anytime there's a successful Slayer shot, it's like, oh, put a point on the board. If you were drunk or poisoned and hit the demon, they're like, well, that's a half point.
Yep. This game does need achievements. We need to have some sort of achievements that we can hand out to players. I know people have kind of put something together unofficially, but I would love that in the game, that you can get these little rewards that you can put little badges on your token or something.
Yeah, I had thought about that before it even started kind of a list. This was several years ago now. One, it was a lot of effort to put together, but two, it was I guess I worry about it affecting how people play too much. Like now they're playing for achievements.
Yeah.
I was a mod on the unofficial server when some people were passing around a bingo card. I think it's a bingo card or something of the sort, and it was like, yeah, this is kind of fine, but we don't want players to be playing for their bingo card and not for the game. So it's a little very group dependent. I know groups who do that, and then it definitely makes sense for them. But it's yeah, something you have to be careful with.
Yeah, we kept stats early on, kind of how often people were good and evil and townsfolk, and win-loss records, winning with good, winning with evil, and we stopped that fairly quickly on because like it just, I don't know, it was interesting, but it wasn't helpful. And it's more fun just to kind of like, you're not working, you don't care about winning so much, you just want to have a good time. And so
I'm more interested in keeping stats as a storyteller than a player, really. Because I would really, and I never have, and I want to, I just can't be bothered to do it. But I would love to go. It's like, oh, well, how often is people winning my, how often is good winning my Trouble Brewing games or my Extension Cord game? I've never kept track for stats for Extension Cord, even though probably should to see how it played. But yeah, it is what it is.
yeah, it is interesting to be able to watch that, to make sure that you're kind of keeping a 50-50 ratio of good versus evil winning. And so yeah, there's uses for it for sure.
Yeah. All right, we got a couple more characters to go. So next one, how do you feel about Atheist?
I do enjoy Atheist games. I try very hard to make sure that they're solvable, because it can also be kind of the wizardy situation where sometimes it can feel a little bit rough to solve the game with an atheist involved. But it's a great addition to the game. I've never played in an atheist game, I don't think. I wish I had, but I've run a couple and they've been good fun. You can do some fun little shenanigans, and I think it adds to the puzzle for the good team to put together, and it also puts everybody on the same team solving the puzzle. And I think that's also fun. And then it's a fun little solution in the end, usually when they find my little clues I left around for them. And I really enjoy those games. And I also enjoy just having atheists on the script, because it gives the evil team a whole other layer of things that they can bluff. And when things maybe don't go as expected, you have that other excuse for, like, like that thing I said earlier, that must be an atheist thing that happened. It wasn't a mistake I made. And so it just adds this extra layer. Of course, it's an advanced character, but I think it makes the puzzle more interesting when done right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only atheist game I've really played in, not including like a Teensyville, was, and I've told this story I think recently on here, but I'll tell it again real quick. TPI did their big auctioneer mega stream, 24-hour stream for charity, and I woke up and then they were getting ready to start their last game. Atheist hadn't been added yet, and it was almost certain that Atheist was going to be the next character added by donations. And they were like, we're going to open this up to 20 players, and there were 19 seats taken. I rolled out of bed and I was like, I guess I could be a traveler in it's almost surely going to be an atheist game. And it was an atheist game until the Alchemist Wizard wished that it wasn't, and wished that there was an evil team.
Yep, I watched that game.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, but um, yeah, it was. That's my main experience with Atheist.
That game worked out surprisingly well. I remember for some reason I was watching it while sitting in my car in a Walmart parking lot, and I had it up on my phone, and I just was stuck in the car. Like I needed to finish watching this game, so I just sat in the car for 20 minutes until the game was over. That was a very fun, watchable game, and I'm glad they posted it on YouTube too because that was so much fun.
hmm Yeah. All right, one last character for this list. How do you feel about Legion?
um, I haven't been in a Legion game, and it's another one that I use sparingly.
hmm
Um, because it's it's I think stressful for almost everybody involved. The Legion's very stressed about their voting, and it makes that you feel like you can give away the game if you make a mistake there. And that's another kind of feels bad moment. And then it's stressful for a good player because you're worried that you're one of the only few good players there, and it can be very stressful. Like you really need to stay alive and not get executed. And so I think it can be a little bit rough on everybody involved, but it's also a fun, interesting challenge in a game that you want to throw out there every now and again, because it's a new experience and it turns the game on its head, and it's I think is an interesting challenge for everybody involved. And so when you're ready to kind of mix it up, I like having it as an option. I know it can be a little rough for especially newer players or players who aren't hardcore, and so I want to
Yeah.
be careful with it. But that's kind of how we've only done one or two Legion games on my channel, and they turned out well, but they could have easily gone badly, I think.
Yeah, I'm always surprised when I run games and it ends up going pretty well. Helps having a group who know each other well. At this point, my group can like, I don't even give Legion bluffs at this point, and they coordinate extremely well. But yeah.
It's a fun one. I want to run a Legion game again soon. Plus, we make really good thumbnails, or really, I'll say fun thumbnails. I'll leave it to other people to decide if they're good or not. And our Legion game, I managed to get everybody to kind of do the like hand up, like staring blankly into the
Oh yeah,
camera,
yeah.
and I photoshopped an extra finger onto everybody. And it's just one of my favorite thumbnails to see this diverse group of players with their little hands up in the thing, and it was just a fun aesthetic, and I really enjoyed that part of it, just the thumbnail part of it.
Right. Yeah. I know NRB has a thumbnail that's like that, and
Oh, that's right, they do.
it's a fun one. Yeah. All right. Well, we have one last section here. I like to call it this or that. I'll just name two characters. You can respond however you want. You can interpret the question however you'd like. So we'll start with the first two. How about philosopher or empath?
Ooh, philosopher. You get to do whatever you want, and I always, if there's philosophers on the script as a storyteller, I always want to throw it out there as an option because it's so fun for the players to get. They get to have the game that they want to have that day, and I think that's great.
I also really love it as a bluff, because it's used to say, "Oh, well, your information must be wrong
Mm-hmm.
because I'm the philo savant, so don't trust your savant info."
It's a great bluff.
Yeah. Next couple, how about Undertaker or Cannibal? You mentioned Cannibal earlier.
I do like the cannibal. I was watching Samantha on here, and she said Undertaker, but I've got to go cannibal because you have that extra layer of you. You get additional information, and you have a little bit more of a puzzle to solve. I like the games where I have a little mini game, a little thing of my own to do. My favorite
Mm-hmm.
character to be is the amnesiac because I get my own little game on top of everything else,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody wants to help the amnesiac solve the game. And I think the cannibal is a little bit similar in that you not only get to verify people, but you get to get additional information. It's just so much fun to solve that little puzzle. So cannibal.
Yeah. All right. Next couple here, how about Lunatic or Recluse?
Oh my gosh. I was a lunatic in one of my very first games. It was the first token I drew in one of Malachi's games. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I still won. I won that game, but I just didn't realize I had won. Um, uh, I think I like being the recluse though, because the recluse for me, I enjoyed that because I can have a little bit of a chaotic game and just try to get myself either executed or killed. And I kind of enjoy that reverse aspect of it. Like I kind of want to die, and just to try to get myself executed is a fun little mini game for myself. So I kind of like that little tilt on the head of a game.
Yeah. All right. Next couple characters: Zealot or Saint.
Oh, um, I haven't gotten to play with the Zealot very much. Um,
Definitely still one of the newer ones. Yeah.
yeah, I Zealot's great. Like Zealot is a great bluff. It's I think it. I'm not. I'm trying to imagine how it feels as a player. I you get a little bit of your agency taken away, which I think can be a little bit hard. But it might be another one's characters that kind of I don't mind dying, and so you can kind of have that little fun of an adventure. The Saint is one of those two that I'm a little bit hesitant for because it can be like you got yourself executed, and so your team loses, but it's not your fault. It's everybody who didn't trust you. It's their fault. So you get to put the blame on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I might go Saint in this one. It's a classic, and I've had more experience with it, and I'm more comfortable with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do think it's funny. Some people are like, "Well, for me, Zealot doesn't have an ability because I vote for everything anyway."
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right. How about Summoner or Vizier?
The Vizier, I don't even think I've had in a game yet, even one that I've run. I think it's the one character besides the Heretic that hasn't hit my table just yet, at least that I can remember. And so I don't have as much experience with that one either. I've already forgotten what was the other one that you said, Vizier or
Uh, Summoner.
Summoner. I do really like the Summoner though. The
I do too.
Summoner, I like. Like I said, this game is about choices. All good games are about choices, and that's such a fun choice to give to a minion. You get to choose the type of demon. You get to choose who the demon is, and when you're giving your players fun, meaningful choices to make, I think it's great. And so I think the Summoner is a really excellent example of that. And I like the characters that encourage you to be social. And the Summoner really needs to go out there and suss out what's going on to make good choices.
Yeah.
So that's one I like too. So Summoner all the way.
Yeah, and I don't know. I really like what it does to the group, where somebody that you might hard trust for the first couple of days might just go out the window.
Yep.
Vizier is interesting to run because it's as loud of a minion as it gets.
Yep.
So you don't have to be like, oh, will it be in play? Will it not be in play? You can just be like, oh, yeah, it's in play.
It could be a fun one too, I bet, to play as. Out of Evils is fun.
Yeah, that's definitely group and player dependent because not everybody enjoys that. But especially if you have a good group who doesn't mind talking out at evil players, which hopefully everybody is cool with, because talk to out at evil players, one, it's fun, and two, you actually can learn something from them. But yeah.
That's one thing we do try to emphasize in our group is, make sure everybody feels included. Everybody is sharing the control of the spotlight in this game. So make sure everybody gets their moment in the spotlight and doesn't feel left out. So I think with our group, it would be particularly okay. But we need to try it. We haven't taken it out yet.
Yeah. All right, next couple here, we got Scarlet Woman or Devil's Advocate.
Oh my gosh, that's a tough one. I do like, just from a storytelling perspective too, I like the Scarlet Woman because it helps you get to the final three. The Devil's Advocate is a fun little challenge in itself, but it can prolong a game, depending on how it plays out, which can be okay or not. But just from making a game that feels like you've gotten the full experience, the Scarlet Woman's a great tool to have in your pocket. And so I'd probably just go with that one based on that. Devil's Advocate can be a little bit variable if it makes the game more fun or not, just from the lengthening out the game kind of perspective.
Yeah, makes sense. It's also where running your days quicker can come in handy, especially for VMR.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. It's like, okay, it's day 7. Y'all have 30 seconds to talk and then come back.
Yeah, we have little bumpers that we air of our little kobold characters. We have little kobold characters, like these little guys that show up but for our day and night transitions. And I only have them up to like day 8. And so we can't have the games go that long, or I'm going to have to go pay my artist to make new graphics. So
Lovely. All right. How about Poe or Al Hadikia?
I'll probably go Poe. I haven't seen Al Hadikia games, at least that I've watched and that I've played in. I feel like they very rarely, or they less frequently get to that final three, final four kind of situation. They often seem to end prematurely for various reasons, whether it's the Al-Hadiki picking themselves to try to make themselves look good and then get themselves killed off, which is because funny the first couple of times, but it can get kind of bad. Um,
That's
but
fair. Yeah.
the Poe, if you want a snappy game and you want interesting choices for your demon to have to make, it's a very good one. So I find the Poe just to be a little bit more reliable in that sense.
Cool. All right, two more characters here, and this will be the last one. And I have in my mind how you'll answer, but I'm curious if I'm right or not.
Okay, all
How
right.
about Yagababble or Lil Monster?
Oh, the Yaga Babble. I'm going to talk about both of them. I'll make it quick. The Yaga
Oh, you're
Babble
good.
is
Yeah.
great when you know your players and you can give them personalized phrases. We have one player. My best Yaga Babble game was we had a player whose name is Micah. Micah Draws, and he and his partner have a very popular YouTube channel with like millions of people who watch it, called Fuffy Ferrets, because they have like a dozen ferrets. And so
Interesting.
Micah always has little ferrets around. He's holding up the screen. And so his Yakababble phrase when he drew that token was, I have a ferret. Probably the only time I have a ferret has been used as a Yakababble phrase. And he won that game as a Yagababble because he like when things would get heated and people were gonna get. He's like, "Hey guys, look, I have a ferret," and just to try to calm everybody down, he hold a ferret to the screen, and it was a great one of our most memorable games. And so when you can tailor those phrases to your players, it can be a whole bunch of fun. And so I love the Yagababble. And again, I've forgotten what your second character was. What was the other one?
Lil Monster.
Little Monster. We do enjoy Little Monster games. Like yeah, those are fun too because it really makes the evil team feel like a little group and family, and that's an added choice that you get to give to all your evil players. And like I said, I like things with choices. So I'm a little bit equal on those. It's hard to come down one side or the other.
Yeah.
If I had to pick between the two, I might go Little Monster because Yagababble can sometimes be hard if you're not as familiar with all your players. But Little
Yeah.
Monster is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was particularly interested in your answer on Yagababble. I guess just because I'm thinking people who like do improv or other performances. I don't know. It just feels like a character, I guess, that matches up with that very well, or at least could
Yeah,
potentially.
we do enjoy it. I just haven't gotten to the table enough
Yeah.
to get to practice with it. But it's a fun one. I love both of those.
For me, it's one of the more scarier ones. Characters of Storytell, just because it is so dependent. I have played in a game where I was a minion, and the demon had a phrase that just was not easy to get off, and it yeah didn't go well. But such as it is.
It's very storyteller dependent, and I think
Mhm.
sometimes if a storyteller can work with a player to develop a
Yeah,
phrase that would be a little bit natural, I think it helps
yeah.
being flexible there.
All right, one last question before we go. So, looking at this script, Harold Holt's Revenge. What character would you like to be in real life?
Oh, in real life, that's right. Ooh, I would love to be a magician.
All right, yeah,
I have I'm naturally an introvert, but I've been working in the school system as a teacher and psychologist. I've done improv. I've done in high school as a performer, and so I've been fighting against my natural introverted tendencies my entire life. And I think the way you graduate from that is you just become a magician. You're just on stage doing sleight of hand, and anything could go wrong in any moment. But you're good with that, and you're brave, and you fight through it. And I think that's my ultimate level 20 ability when I reach my D&D level 20 is to be a magician and be able to get on stage and do that. So that's what I would want to be as my end goal.
I love that. All right, well, before we go, is there anything you would like to plug?
Oh, sure. I could be here all day. I'll try to keep it very brief. You can find me over at the Gallant Goblin. We have all of our D&D Pathfinder stuff, which if you play Blood on the Clocktower, I think you'd probably also enjoy being in some D&D adventures. You get to work with a group, you get to solve puzzles, you get to fight battles and tell stories, and it's so much fun. And if you like kobolds, we've got our little kobold plushies. This is our kobold wizard who's been very handy to have around lately. We have a bunch of these little guys. This is another one here, and you can dress them up in different heroic outfits. And if you see our channel and you see our little bumpers between the days of the night, you've gotten to know our little kobolds. We're gonna do our little kobold adventure that you can come and meet all our kobolds kind of in person and play in our D&D thing at Final 3 Con coming up in April. So we'll be there running those, and you get to meet all our goblins or our kobolds and have fun with that. And so if you like those, you can find them at heroplush.com. And last, I'm just going to plug something very quickly from my partner. He writes for Pathfinder, which is the kind of the biggest D&D competitor out there. If you like D&D, but you wanted a little bit more rules heavy, so you can have a little bit more room to kind of create really memorable characters, he wrote for the new Spore War adventure. All the little fun monsters that you find in the back of the book, including this little fun dinosaur guy. He wrote all the monsters for this adventure. And
That's
so
cool.
it's just hitting your stores now. And I'm so proud of Grady for getting to do this. But yeah, Spore War is super great. So go play some really creepy nature-based games in Pathfinder. You can find those in your game store.
Excellent. All right. Well, Theo, thank you for joining today.
Thank you, Sam. It's really a pleasure. Doing these things always feels a little bit like therapy. I get to talk about myself and things I'm interested in for an hour, and I'm not feeling just great. Like, I got to share and meet some new friends.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for taking good care of this community over on the Discord. You helped usher me into this. And I'm sure you've done that for a lot of people that feel like they can kind of come there and talk to some people who know this game. And so you're a great treasure in this community. Everybody speaks so highly of you. I mentioned a few people that I was going to come and talk to you, and they were so excited. So just thank you for everything you've done for the community, and we all really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate those kind words. It means a lot. All right. Well, thank you all for watching. It means a lot to me, too. So stay tuned. Next week, we'll have another episode of Hard Claim.
Bye, Ruddy.